Aloha, everybody. We're about to begin. If you want to take your seats. So we are going to show a presentation on this side. We'll turn some lights down. So if you need to see the slides, you can move closer. But yeah, we're going to start with the slide presentation after some brief admin announcements. Welcome to the Waiawa Armory. It belongs to the Hawaii Army National Guard. We have training units that are here, as well as a maintenance facility. It's about 23 acres big. But thank you for making your way through traffic and rain to be here today. The Hawaii Army National Guard thanks you for coming. Some admin announcements. Bathrooms, pretty important. Out that door on this floor, we have a men's restroom, and then down the stairs, right by the water fountain, men and women. Please feel free to utilize those at any time. In case of an emergency, anything happens, we're going to exit through these two back doors, and somebody from our staff will lead you down, and we'll just get away from the building in case anything happens. We do have an elevator on this side, so if you had trouble coming up the stairs, you may take the elevator to get back to your car. Just make sure one of our guys are there to help you, because once you get down, we have to navigate through the building, and we'll get you back to the parking lot where your car is. We work here, and we get lost in this building. We do have snacks and drinks along the wall. It's not enough for dinner, and this is right around dinner time, so hopefully that's enough just to hold you over. But please help yourself. We're guests in this facility, so please help us pick up your trash when you pow. And we have trash cans and recycle bins in the back. We have a question sign-up roster right in the back. Hey, Adam, can you wave your hand? It's right back there by that counter, and you can sign up right there. I have the first list. I'm going to call on those people first, and then we'll go first come, first serve to anybody else who wants to come up and speak. We're going to try to keep it to 2 minutes per person, and then if nobody's behind you and you have more questions, ask more questions. If somebody is behind you, just have a seat and we'll get you back up. With the number of people here today, I think we should be able to get to everybody. So we did have an open house when you're able to talk story. If you didn't have enough time with that, when this is done, we're still going to be here. Come up to us, ask us questions. The slides you're going to see are very informative, but very detailed. And I was telling some people, it took me 3 or 4 times to see it before I could fully understand it. So if you have a question on a particular slide, please notate that slide, and then you can ask that question. But there are a lot of details. There's a lot of scientific things on there. We use acronyms, but we try to explain them. But once they're explained, we stick with the acronym. So if you don't understand something, let us know and we can explain that to you. Okay, sign up roster. Okay. So my name is Jeff Hickman. I'm the Director of Public Affairs for the State of Hawaii Department of Defense. We have 6 divisions, 2 of the largest being the Hawaii Army and Hawaii Air National Guards. So I'm the public affairs person for them. So today I'm representing the Hawaii Army National Guard. I served 27 years in the National Guard, 20 of them being in Hawaii. I don't look it, but I'm a Kamehameha grad. So I also live in the Waipio area, and I will be speaking at the Pro City Neighborhood Board on the 28th to inform that audience as well. Thank you to all of the organizations and residents and owners and just interested public members for attending today. I'm going to give a real quick, brief summary, and then we'll get into the slideshow. All right, so you're on the facility. On this facility that I said was 23 acres long, we have a firefighting unit. This unit used PFAS materials. It's in a foam that we use to put out fires. When they use this chemical, it wasn't illegal. It was what we're used to train on. It's a very effective tool for putting out fires. So they trained with that. So there was no spill, there was no just inadvertent release. They trained with it because we didn't know it was bad at the time. We trained with it, and we stopped training with it in around 2008. As time went on, EPA came by and said, hey, this chemical is not so good. And so we started the process, and I'm trying not to go into too much detail because it'll be in the slides. But then the Army and DOD started to research facilities around the nation and see what bases used it. And so they got to Hawaii and they do a preliminary assessment and different steps of a process. And the process that we're in now is doing testing off-site. The levels on our soil here, the soil was okay, but the groundwater was not. It tested at higher levels. So that triggers us to take the next step, which is to test wells that may be affected down gradient or down slope of our facility. And that includes the Waiawa Road area. So that's the stage we're at now. We're informing the public, letting them know what we did, what we're doing about it, and now we want the public to know what they can do. First is attend meetings like this and get information, ask us questions, take flyers home, share. Anybody's email in the back who signed in, I will send them a link to this presentation so you can share that. We're going to share it with our elected officials as well, including the U.S. delegation and all of the local state legislatures and city council. So you will have this whole brief recorded. And I ask you, please do share it, get the word out. Okay, I'll let you get into the more of the details. The next step for us is to get permission to go on and start testing wells so we can get more information. Okay, so that's it for me. I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves and we'll get right to the brief. Rob?
Hi, I'm Rob Halla from the Army National Guard Directorate in Arlington, Virginia. I am a program manager in the Cleanup and Restoration Branch.
I'm Lieutenant Colonel Brian Hunsaker. I am the Branch Chief for Cleanup and Restoration at Army National Guard Headquarters in Arlington, Virginia.
Aloha, my name is Sven Lindstrom. I'm with the Hawaii Department of Health Hazard Evaluation and Emergency Response Office. My role is to conduct regulatory oversight of the National Guard's cleanup activities under CERCLA.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. I also have tonight the Hawaii Army National Guard Chief of Staff. Introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, aloha. Welcome, everybody. My name is Colonel Tyson Tahara. I am like Jeff was saying, I'm the Hawaii Army National Guard Chief of Staff. I've been in the National Guard for 37 years. Hawaii Army National Guard is a community-based organization. We're made up of members who live in a community. I grew up in Mililani, and I currently live in Makakilo with my wife and daughter. Only time I really moved out of the state for a long period of time was like for military schools or deployments, for a couple deployments. So that's the only time I really left the state. The Hawaii Army National Guard is here for the long process ahead, and we'll do everything we can within the law to help our community. Like Jeff was saying, we followed all the regulations when we trained with the AFFF, which is that firefighting foam, in place at that time. And then we stopped using it once the environmental changed their regulations and told us that we shouldn't use this chemical anymore, so we stopped. And the only reason we used it was for our training, because our soldiers needed to deploy, and their primary mission was to put out aircraft fires. And that's why that foam is very effective in putting out aircraft fires. The environmental issues like this, the process is slow, and you'll get a briefing on that, but it's deliberate and detailed. So again, I want to thank you for coming out tonight. You guys will voice your opinion and then gain some valuable information from our subject matter experts here tonight. So again, thank you guys very much.
All right, so we're gonna go ahead. We have about 18 slides. And if you could hold your questions until the end so we can get through it. So again, you can notate the slide, you can just describe it, and we can go back to it and answer questions. But hold your questions until the end. We'll have Lieutenant Colonel Hunsaker go through the whole thing. It takes about maybe 25 minutes. If you need to move closer, we're gonna turn off the lights so you can turn your chairs. And then we'll start back up with the panel. Sir?
Thank you. To reiterate, I am Lieutenant Colonel Brian Hunsaker. I am with the Army National Guard headquarters. But the thing to understand about the Army National Guard is the headquarters is made up by the 54 states and territories have to supply the individuals like myself to go to National Guard Bureau headquarters. So I am actually a member of the Nevada Army National Guard. I spent 20 years in the Nevada Army National Guard in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so that's my experience. And the reason I bring that up, as the good colonel said, we are part of the community, and we very much value that. The National Guard's role, our main purpose, is to protect the community. Hurricanes, floods, fires, these are all things where we're called on to serve the community, and we take great pride in that. And so we extend that when we have an issue that we have caused to the community, we take it extremely serious because, again, we are the community. So I want to give a little bit more information about what we do. This project and this site inspection is all led by the Hawaii Army National Guard. As the national representative, we are here to supply resources and technical expertise. My predecessor was Lieutenant Colonel Donna Wu, and she was from the Hawaii National Guard. She started right here. She had my job before me, and now she's at the Pentagon as our liaison to the big Army at the Pentagon. So again, we are all populated from local National Guards from the different states and territories. And we take this very seriously because of that. So the big things we want to point out, the first thing is on this is the CERCLA. And you can read the definition of CERCLA. What you need to know about CERCLA, or the words, the acronym, is that CERCLA is the legal authority that we have to make corrections for anything that we've done adversely to the environment. It's a law that dates back to the 1980s. And basically it states when the EPA comes out with health advisories, then we follow them. And so that's the authority that we have, and we are here at the Waiawa Ute site, and what the Ute site, that's where we are right now, is basically where equipment is maintained and worked on. So it's basically a mechanic shop. And so the firefighting equipment was maintained here, and in addition, the firefighting unit was assigned here and did training as well. So who is involved? This is the process we're going through. Again, the Hawaii Army National Guard is the lead. If you see anyone coming to your door and wanting to sample the water, give you information, the first line to contact is them. Again, Army National Guard, the headquarters, that's myself and Mr. Rob Halla. We're in Arlington, and we provide the resources and the expertise. Helping us out is the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where we have all sites across the entire United States. The Army Corps of Engineers also includes active duty Army sites as well as Air Force. So they have a lot of experience that we can tap into. And then finally, we also have AECOM, which is a private company, and they are the actual expertise that do the well sampling, well digging, all of the 3D modeling that's going to be necessary for all this process. So they are the actual scientists on the ground that are going to be doing all the work. And again, the Hawaii Army National Guard is going to be project managing. So these are the people that are doing the work, and then we come up with study results and we give them to all of these departments here. The Hawaii Department of Health, the Board of Water Supply, and Department of Land and Natural Resources. All of these different agencies will be given all of the data that we collect. At this point, and I'll get into the steps of CERCLA in a slide in just a minute, but right now we are finishing up the site investigation or site inspection, And it is being reviewed by these 3 agencies, and we expect that to be released in March, and that again will be put out on the website. So you will all have access to all of this information. So I'm going to get into the CERCLA process, as I mentioned. The key thing that we're interested in is human health. We take it extremely seriously, and specifically when it relates to PFAS is drinking water. That seems to be where the issue is that has come out according to what the Environmental Protection Agency has been studying. So what we're going to do is we're doing 2 things simultaneously. Because we know we had a release of some PFAS on this site, we are going to sample drinking water down gradient from here. So if the water moved, if the AFFF traveled off of this location, the probability of where it went, we're going to sample drinking water at this point to make sure that we're not exposing anyone to any additional risk. Simultaneously, we're going to do the CERCLA process and try and figure out how extensive is it. Did it leave the site? We're not even sure that it's left the site yet. And if it did, what are we going to do about it? The big thing is we're going to, a couple of things. If we test your drinking water and it exceeds 70 parts per trillion, then we will supply bottled drinking water to the members of your household. And the last thing is we're going to work transparently with the community, DOH, BWS, and everybody on that list throughout the entire process. We will publish, and at each completion, at the completion of each phase, it will be published to the web. And you will all have full access to all of this data, or all of the publications. So what is PFAS? So let's get into the nitty-gritty. What is PFAS? PFAS is a group of chemicals. There are many thousands out there that have been in use since the 1970s. And for the most part, these are non-reactive chemicals. They have a ton of different uses. For the most part, they were thought to have been safe. So there's 2 types of effects if you're exposed to something. There's acute effects and there's chronic effects. Acute effects means you ingest it and you get sick within a short period of time, or you have a health effects. And we have some toxicologists that are more on site that are more experienced with this and who answer you more technical questions. But kind of in general terms, an acute effect means you're exposed to it and you might get sick, you might get diarrhea. It has immediate effects, fevers, you're not feeling well. Those are acute effects. PFAS does not have acute effects, and that's why it was considered to be safe. After being used for many decades, again, these were used starting in the 1970s, there started to be some patterns develop, and it's like, wait a minute, maybe this is having some chronic effects. And chronic effects refer to if you continually drink the water that has elevated levels of PFAS over many years, then it starts to cause effects. And there are a lot of different effects that this can be. Thyroid effects, effects to the kidneys, but they're not things that manifest themselves until many years later. So when patterns started to develop, that's when the EPA came, or the Environmental Protection Agency, came up with health advisories of what they thought was a safe exposure level. So that's PFAS. You'll hear it's called PFOA, PFAS, anyway, there's a lot of different terms. The whole group is called PFAS, and we'll narrow it down into 5 basic chemicals that we are interested in studying on this site. So here are different PFAS sources all around us. Many of you have probably heard about Teflon, and maybe there were some things that came out maybe 5-10 years ago that started talking about, are Teflon pans okay? It's still kind of out there. The data is not completely decided on that. So we're shying away from these things. The one we're interested in is the AFFF, aqueous film forming foam. What this is firefighting foam. Fuel fires are very hard to distinguish. If you get a fuel fire, like your oil catches fire on your stove, the only way to really put it out is to smother it, put a pan lid over it. In the case of a fuel fire, if an airplane catches fire, we need to get that fire out quickly, or the inhabitants on that aircraft are going to be in immediate danger. So that's what we use, is the AFFF. It's extremely effective at putting out fuel fires. So it was started, again, used in about the 1970s, is the most effective firefighting tool that we had. And for all of these years, it was thought to be extremely safe. So on this site, that's one we're concerned about, and that's what we're looking for. So why this site? So what happened, as soon as the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, published the health advisory for PFAS, the military as a whole and the Army National Guard specifically started looking at what do we use that has these compounds? Do we use any of them? The one we targeted was AFFF. So we went to all of our sites nationwide that used AFFF, and we started to do investigations to go, hey, is it here? Was it a problem? Did we release any? At this site, as was already mentioned, we maintained the firefighting truck, the fire truck, and we also tested it because of the firefighters that were stationed here. And so all aviation, civilian, military, has been using AFFF for many years now. We were included in that. So the preliminary assessment has been made. And I'll get into the steps in a little bit, but we did find out that there was AFFF, and so that led to the other steps, and I'll get to those in the circular process. The big thing to use is the firefighting practice or training was stopped in 2008 as they started, the unit was deployed, and when they came back, they used different techniques, so they stopped using it, and there's been no releases since 2008. It was stored on the site until 2020, and there has been none stored on this site since that time. So here is the CERCLA process, the entire process. And the key thing to understand here is we have completed the first step, and we're almost to publish the results in the second. So the first step was a preliminary assessment. This is where we said what chemicals were used here, and we went back, and this is kind of a slow process because we had to go talk to everybody that's ever worked here, and some of these people have been retired 10 and 20 years. So we tracked them down as best we could and interviewed them. Did you use AFFF? Yes. Where did you use it? Did you release any? And they, yeah, we were firefighters. We trained on it. That's what we do. So we got the information from everybody that we could get a hold of, and it's like, you know what? We had some released in this area, so that means we have to go to the next step. The next step was the site inspection. The site inspection, we collected all of this data from all these people we talked to, the chemicals that were used, and we started to sample the soil and the water in the area. So we know that it was released here. Is it still here? Is it in quantities that we should be concerned about? So that was the site inspection. All of the data was collected and finished in December, the end of December, right before Christmas in 2022. So we had all that data. We started compiling it, putting it in a form that people could understand, and then we've shipped it off to all those other agencies that we talked about, and they're doing reviews and making comments, and we're going to publish the final results again in March. So that will be done, and again, the results from the site inspection said, in the soil we didn't find any, or we found levels so low that it's not a concern. We really couldn't even quantify what was there, it was so low. However, when we tested some of the groundwater, we did find hits that were above what was desirable. And so because of that, we know we have to go to the next step, which is remedial investigation. Now here's the most important part of everything we're going to say tonight. And in each of these steps, we have the authority to do what's called a TICRA. And this is an immediate action if we sense that there is any safety concerns that will affect the community. And that is what we're doing tonight, and that's what to get your permission to come onto your site and sample the water. So what we want to do is, we did the site inspection, we know that we have PFAS in the groundwater, it's not super high, but it's higher than we would like, and it's out our boundary. We don't know if it left the boundary, we don't know how far it went. So we looked at all of the wells in the area, anyone that was using a private well, and we plotted them on a map, and we figured out where it was, and basically most of your homes in the community is about a mile, a little bit less than a mile away, so the chances of the PFAS having got that far are low, but not zero. And because of that, we are going to offer to test your drinking water. That's what we want to do. So this is the TICRA. It's not the final solution. We're going to go through the whole process, figure out what's really there, find the best solution to remediate the situation, and then we're going to execute. But that takes time because we have to sample. Based on those results, we have to sample in a new location, many wells. We have to get a 3D model of what's there. It's a very long and complicated process. And we're going to do that as fast as we can, but We want to make sure that your drinking water is safe, so we're going to simultaneously test drinking water that's in an area of concern. So again, do we think the PFAS, the AFFF, has traveled that far? We don't. It's highly unlikely that it would have gone over a mile. It is possible, so we're going to test the water. And then the remedial investigation, we will go through this. This is all going to be transparent. You'll have access to all these reports as well. And that's where we try and determine how far this has traveled. And that's the steps we'll be going on next. If we see that it has left our compound, then we'll go through the rest of the steps on here and eventually come up with the remedial action. And that can be so many different things depending on what we find. So here's a map of the area. Let me see if I can get that. We are in this building right here, right now. Up here is where they did the training. Down here is the wash rack and where the equipment was maintained. Right here is Waiawa Stream, and the dotted line arrow here tells you the direction of surface water. The blue solid line here is the direction of groundwater. So obviously, if they're moving down in a general southwest direction, these areas in here below that would be the most likely area that we would see any of the AFFF having migrated off of the site. So again, we did the site inspection. The report's about to come out, and here's what we found. We tested the fire truck pumping area, which is the training area, and the maintenance area. We collected ground flow data. Surface water is easy to see where it goes. Groundwater is a little more difficult, so we sampled it to make, they generally follow the same path, but not always. So we definitely tracked the ground flow water to see which direction it was going, because we want to, again, treat the areas most likely to be affected. We also gathered all kinds of information outside of Utes. This includes where are the wells? Who's on the wells? Is it drinking water? Is it municipal water? If you're on municipal water, we are sampling those. They are being sampled, so we're not concerned. Those are safe. But if you're coming off your own well, then definitely something we want to check. We also looked for other sources and anything else that might be affecting our results. We checked groundwater and soil concentrations at the installation boundary. So what is the TICRA? Again, the TICRAs are immediate reaction. We can do this at any of the steps. If we get new data, we will go back and we'll say, hey, we got new data, maybe there's a concern, let's take an immediate action to make sure everybody is drinking safe, has safe drinking water. The interim we're looking for is the Environmental Protection Agency has a health advisory that says if you're drinking this water every single day, it shouldn't exceed 70 parts per trillion. That's the magic number. As EPA gets more information, they may change that number, and if they do, then we will change ours as we just follow their number. So if they raise it or lower it, we will match that with the drinking water. And the key thing is, if it exceeds that threshold, we will supply your house with bottled drinking water. Of the ones we're testing, the two that have the health advisory are the PFOA, and PFAS, PFOS. These are the two that the EPA has said they have health concerns for. And again, it's combined. So we combine those two together, and if the concentration of the two combined exceeds 70 parts per trillion, as the interim action, this TICRA, we will supply you with bottled drinking water. So a couple other things as part of the site inspection that we've conducted. First of all, 1 part per trillion, what does that mean? It's a very small quantity. We're talking 1 drop of water in 20 swimming pools, Olympic-sized swimming pools. The second thing we looked at is hold on to the thought about a health advisory. We're sampling your water, that's a TICRA. If it exceeds the threshold of the health advisory, we're going to deal with it. We're going to give you bottled drinking water. This is screening levels for the for the site inspection. And what this was is it's like we sampled the soil, we sampled the water, do we expand the search or not? If it's below the screening levels, we say, hey, it's not a big deal, the contaminants aren't that high, we're going to move on. If, however, they're above the screening levels, that says we need to do more research and see how far this is and is it a real problem. And as you can see, these numbers here, these are the screening levels. Right here is what is acceptable. These are the screening levels, not health levels. These are much, much lower. And the reason they are lower is it helps us figure out what is the three-dimensional model of how far this AFFF has migrated, if it has. And so these are the numbers that we target right over here. There's some other differences if residential and commercial areas are allowed higher screening levels than residential areas. We're talking about residential areas, so we're taking the higher standard. So again, these are really low, and these are screening levels. Key idea here, do we need to do more investigation? In the case of this site right here, according to CERCLA, the data suggests the screening levels say we're doing more testing, and that's what we're going to do. So here are the actual results. We tested the soil, and we didn't find anything measurable. And you can see right here to show you the numbers. These are the 5 chemicals we checked for. The 2 on top are the ones we're concerned about, and here were the levels. This is this is the screening level on the right, and right here is what we came up with. The reason it says less than is anything below 2.5 parts per trillion, we can't quantify, we can't put a number to it, it's too small to really detect. So some of them were like, yeah, there might be something there, but nothing that we could really put a number to. So the soil was fine. But when we got into the groundwater, you can see here's our screening levels. Again, they're really low because we want to see what's there. And you can see that the 2 we're interested in, PFOA and PFAS, together add up to about 330. Some of you will be quicker at math than I am, but it's in that range. So it's not astronomically high. It's not as high as other sites, but it is higher than what's desirable and definitely above our screening levels. And that's what's important for the remedial investigation. It's above the screening levels. We need to see how far this went and which directions it did go, if it did. The other ones are very useful to us. There's no health advisory for them. EPA hasn't published anything. There's no evidence that they have any of the adverse health effects. But we track them because they move at different rates. And so it gives us a very nice picture of how everything is moving, what's going on in the ground below us, how the water is moving, how the chemical is interacting with us. So this gives us a ton of information that allows us to drill down on where the chemicals that we're very concerned about are going to go. These tend to move faster, so if we see them ahead, we're like, oh boy, these are going this direction, we need to follow it, because then we'll look, even though we're not seeing levels of these ones we're concerned about, we know that it'll probably happen. So that's the screening level, that's the big idea behind it. And you can see that a couple of them, and this next slide will make it look better because we have the map. Again, here is the site, building that we're in. These are the 4 or the 5 sites that we tested. Anything with a circle, a yellow circle around it, exceeds the screening level. So all of these for PFOA, again, one of those we're concerned about, did exceed the screening levels. PFAS, the other one we're concerned about, also exceeded the screening levels. The larger the circle, the higher the concentration. For the other ones, you can see this one only didn't really exceed it, the PFBS, which is good. The PFHX did exceed it. Again, not one we're health concerned about, but it gives us a lot of data. If we have those high numbers, again, we're going to look and expand our search. And finally, the PFNA, same thing, very much below the screening levels. So all these circles here, much smaller. We weren't as concerned about that one. So here is the area of interest that we're going to expand for drinking water search. So that was the CERCLA process, going to remedial investigations because we exceeded the screening levels. Because of that, we're doing a TICRA, an immediate action, to make sure that everyone has safe drinking water. So orientate you to the map. Here's the location we are now. And down here, you can see some sites, Home Depot, Walmart. Right here is the train station. This rectangle, is the area of interest where we want to sample drinking water. You're all probably wondering, and here's the blow up of that area. This is the rectangle that we're going to do further investigations of the drinking water. We chose that area because the flow of the groundwater is that direction. In here, this is all marine areas. Everyone here is on municipal water, so we're not concerned that anyone is getting drinking water in this area. Down here is where we started to identify wells. So again, this is our area of interest. Houses in those areas are the ones we're going to ask for permission to sample your drinking water. Again, for the most part, it's about a mile away, so the chances of it migrating that far are low, but possible, so we're going to take the precautions and test. Oh, one thing I missed on this, the star here is a municipal well. They sample their own water. It's really far out of the boundary. It's kind of the wrong direction. Highly unlikely that any of our PFAS reach there, but we're going to sample it as well just because this affects so many people also. So what are the steps? What are the next steps? Right now, the meeting today, right here, right now, is where we're going. We're trying to inform you, the public, of where we are, what we're doing, and try and give you all the information that we have. In the coming weeks, we're going to sample all of these wells that everyone gives us permission. The key things, drinking water on private wells where you've given us permission to come access your site. What'll happen is someone from the Hawaii National Guard will show up with our technicians that are coming from AECOM. They will make arrangements with you at a time that's your convenience, sample the water, take it off. Take the water sample, we send it into the labs. Because this is a developing situation nationwide, there's a limited amount of lab capacity. And so right now it's taking about 12 to 14 weeks to get those results back. That's what we're seeing in other sites that we've done. As soon as we sample it, we're going to send it off, then the process starts. Once we get the results back, one of two things will happen. We get all the results back tied to your location. We keep your privacy, so we don't assign or release it by your name, but we release the rest of the data in cumulative. So the two things that are going to happen is, if your results come below the health advisory, what we're going to do is give you a certified letter and send it through the mail, and it'll arrive at your house, and it'll say, here's your list. It'll have all the chemicals, it'll have the screening levels, it'll have the health advisory levels, and what the levels are in your drinking water. The other situation is if for some reason you do have elevated PFAS and PFOA levels, then what will happen is the very next day, and it is within 24 hours, one of the Hawaii National Guardsmen will show up to your door with the results and bottled water. So one of those two things will happen once we get the results back. Later this summer, then we're going to start the remedial investigation process to again see if it has actually left the site, and if so, how far, and how deep did it go, and get that three-dimensional model built of how far this AFFF has moved. So they're going to be two separate things. We're sampling the water, and we're going to start the remedial action, or the immediate action, intermediate reaction. Did I get that right?
The remedial
The
investigation.
remedial investigation, thank you. Here's our contact information. Again, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Brian Hunsaker. This is my contact information. I'm on Eastern Time Zone. Rob Halla, we're in the same office. Leslie Chow is back here in the corner. She's the local, she works for the Hawaii National Guard. She lives here. She is the lead on this, the project manager. She should be able to answer most of your questions, and we're going to support her in every which way we can. And then we also have Sven Lindstrom up on the stand from Department of Health, and his contact information as well. And here is the website, and you're welcome to take a picture of this. We'll leave it up for the rest of the evening, and it's also on a lot of the literature that's there that will have all of the information we collect.
All right, thank you. That website is not actually on any literature because we just created it. On that website is also the preliminary assessment report, which is public. The site inspection report is finishing up and should be done in a couple weeks. And my phone keeps falling. And those are public documents, PDFs that you can download or view online. Also on that website is a questionnaire. So if you have a question that you can't remember tonight, put it in there and it comes to me and Leslie. And we'll go ahead and get the people to answer that question. Another thing on the website are links to EPA, DLNR Water Commission, Board of Water, other resources. So if you want to see other reports and get more information, all of that is there. So again, that's not in any literature that you have, but when I send out to the emails here the link to the video of this, I will include a copy of that so you have it. Thank you very much, sir, for briefing that. Okay, so thank you for holding your questions. We're going to leave that slide up. You can get to that information. I have 4 people that signed up so far, and then after that, whoever wants to ask a question can go and ask. So if I can get Susan P. first to ask, and then D. Momilani. If you can line up behind, you can go next. 1 second, we'll get that mic on. Go ahead.
It's not, oh yeah, now it is. Okay, since there's only 4 of us, can we get 4 minutes instead of 2?
That's a good idea.
Thank you. Okay, some of the stuff that I jotted down before I came here is some of the pamphlets and flyers that have been passed out, and even today, indicate that little is known about the health and environmental risks of exposure to a combination of these chemicals, and that 98% of Americans have detectable PFAS in their blood. Frankly, we don't care. We just want to know about the water. Okay, so sometimes passing this out like this is just extra information that doesn't help anybody in this room, residents. The AFFF, it was good to hear that at least the Army stopped using it, because that's how it gets into the groundwater. But you all have stopped using it, and I think it's been 10 years since you've stopped. Am I correct?
No, you know what? The Army, big Army, it's in our aviation facilities, our hangars, still.
Okay.
Until 2024. They just last month came out with a new chemical that we'll be able to replace it with. So there's a possibility if there's a fire, it could still be used.
Okay, but what about on island?
On island, all the aviation facilities have it until we get the new chemical. The new chemical is just named, so it's going to take a while to switch out AFFF for that.
That's not good news. So we're here to talk about the water, not Teflon, not carpets. People are starting to call this liquid cancer. There is evidence that high exposure to PFOA and PFAS can cause reproductive, developmental, liver, kidney, and immunological problems in lab animals. But there's also been human studies, and so some of the flyers have great information in here about health risks, and I think that's what most people are going to start worrying about. And it's not just people, it's your pets, okay? I'm going to talk about the EALs. This has been an ongoing controversy since the fuel spill in November 2021. And you said that we could go back to some of the slides, and I did take questions on the slides, so whoever is running the slides, would you mind like flipping back to the ones that I go to?
Yeah, just let me know which one you want.
Okay, let's start with number 2.
Hold on, thank you.
Is that 3 or 2?
I think I go back one more.
One minute, there you go.
Okay, what I'm asking for, if you can post on your website, is the AECOM, I thought, yeah, there it is, Technical Services Contract with their statement of work. Number 3. Do you know all of the flow? That's one of the most important things, guys, is just that hypotheticalizing or saying it might. We need to know where all the flow is, and I understood the downward direction, but downward isn't only downward on this island. It's this way and this way. It's kind of more than just downward. So that was on number 3. Number 4, oh, is that number 4? No, number 4. I couldn't read it there, so maybe it's 5. The ones with the 70 parts per trillion,
There you go.
I think there were still
the
3.
EALs.
Right.
That's
You
not-
you
I
said
need my-
number,
I need my glasses. I think it's
That one.
That one. I can barely make that one.
Okay, I can use this one, okay? It's one of the number 1 questions I always ask about EALs, and I'm going to do it here too. If the results exceed 70 parts per trillion, we're going to look at it. And there's another slide that I really need to be put up there that has the absent or below screening levels. So if you can find that one, when it has that word,
this is the first one we talked about screening levels. Is that the one you're
I
asking?
know, but there's one that has on top of it, the words say, oh, that's number 9. Okay, we'll go here first. So I always ask this question. What if it's 69 parts per trillion? Do you do nothing because it didn't exceed? I'm not asking the question to get an answer. No.
They have an answer.
Oh, you do? I know what the answer is. Go ahead.
Yeah, we are not allowed to action on it. However, we will be it's definitely we'll be coming back to keep an eye on it and sample.
One of the things we notice is that the PFAS levels are not consistent. So if there's increase of rain, decrease of rain, drought, weather pattern changes, humidity, all these things can affect that concentration. And so if we have anything that's close, we will absolutely come back and retest and make sure that hasn't moved. And if it has, then we'll take the highest one.
Okay.
Hey, Susan, can we have the next person come up, and you can come up and ask more questions later? We got people waiting.
You know, we're getting so off track. I'm almost done with the slides. So you answered that question. Some of it was, sounded like we were minimizing some of the information on the slides, which it's not. It's nothing to be minimized. And thank you for the slides, and if I think of anything else, I'll get back in line. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Momilani, and then I got is that another Susan.
Yeah.
All right, next
I'm
Susan.
sandwiched between 2 Susans.
Got it.
Aloha, I'm born and raised from Oahu, Kalihi Palama side, but I am, my husband, Navy retired 22 years, October 2021. So we've been a we've been a Pearl City resident for now 7.5 years, but on Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing.
Let them know where that is. That's like, it's like 2 blocks over. Big blocks, but
Yeah.
very close to our area.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
talked. I know
Yeah.
exactly where she's talking about.
So I am very much exposed and affected for years from the Navy Red Hill crisis, okay? Even that 2005 one. I also want to say that I got knowledge from Representative Kaikahele that our Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing water well is under Pearl City Home Depot and partially Kamehameha Highway. So I do know that knowledge. I've seen the water maps and everything. But anyway, so I just want to share my concern because, you know, being born and raised from Oahu, yeah, my whole heart, everything, my emotions, everything went not just for the affected families, not just for me and my ohana, but for everything that's impacting for Oahu with this Navy Red Hill. Now I've taken a break, you know, and then now I've got educated a week ago, I think it was last week or a week and a half ago, about this Waiawa. So I've always known, I've always known for years we have been using Waiawa water, but we're on the Navy drinking water system. So my concern to our local community, okay, is me and my ohana, we're living on bottled waters. I don't trust the Navy pipes everywhere it exists on our home island. I know where they exist. I don't trust their hot water heaters. And they can keep saying, oh, DOH, EPA standard. I don't care. I'm not here to disrespect you all, but Me and my family, we've been through a lot of SHIT. We've been through urgent care, emergency care, and despite what our state toxicologist been telling us with our exposures, our health concerns, that speaks different from my medical records. So we know in our Navy drinking water system, there's Simple Green, there's PFAS, AFFF probably, antifreeze, jet fuel, JP5, you know. I even had University of Hawaii scientists that you guys can also use too come and check our water on the down low since December 7th, 2021 up until September 2022. And I had a great communications with them. So I've been warned by my father who retired Chevron, Standard Oil, don't trust the pipes. I've been warned by previous military who are veterans for Air Force and Navy. They were engineers, don't trust the pipes. And I've been warned throughout this whole ordeal, especially University of Hawaii scientists. So since December 2, 2021 to present, we are still using bottled water for everything except washing clothes. We bought new washing machines. We didn't even pass it on to any local families or any military families on the island. We got rid of it because of the exposure our washing machine been through. So we're brushing our teeth, hand washing, bathing our dog, showering, all that. Washing our dishes, cleaning our floor, all with bottled water. Cooking and drinking, it's delivered water or glass bottled water from the Big Island. I would hate for you guys to live like this. I'm being preventive because I know the SHIT we've been through, and that's stated in our military medical records that it was environmental toxins going back to 2019 and 2021 before this whole Red Hill shit. I was this close to finding out. I know this is different, but it just comes together. Okay, so I also want to say that when I found out about this Pearl City, Waiawa with our Army National Guard, I had panic attacks because of my love for home Oahu and what we gone through. And I don't want you guys to go through the same SHIT we gone through with Department of Health, and they going ahead gaslighting you guys saying, oh, even low levels of PFAS and jet fuel and all that's not gonna harm you guys. I don't care. So I was scared to even eat at Pearl City restaurants. That's how scared I was. But thankfully, an Oahu water protector that's been there for us more than the Navy calmed me down over the weekend, and I was able to go enjoy my ramen in Pearl City. Okay, so I have been educated from the Hawaii News Now. I think it was a couple weeks ago, Mahealani Richardson did the news story that if PFAS is dropped into the aquifer, that will spread the jet fuel. That is my concern for home, big time. So anyways, what I want to say to you guys, going back to the bottled water, because I know I just potigi myself way past 3 minutes. I'm so sorry. E kalamai. I would never leave the bottled water system, even if we live here on home Oahu, even the local community. I am traumatized, but more than that, because I can heal fast, I just no longer trust. It's been going on for decades. But also the pipes. I'm scared of the pipes on the Navy drinking water line. So now, I hate to put this all on Ernie. Ernie's our hero. I love Board of Water Supply. So I just want to say that the pipes is what you guys really got to look at. Think of the local community appliances, their hot water heaters, and all that, sprinklers and all that. That's what worries me for our local community too, even the restaurants. And knowing that Waiawa water is now going to, from Pearl City all the way down to Hawaii Kai, into 18 military housing neighborhoods, joint bases, Moanalua Shopping Center where I don't eat no more, Navy Exchange where I don't eat no more, Pearl Harbor, and the joint bases, and dude, and Waikiki, that's why it exhausted me. It exhausted me to know how far out the Waiawa water is going out. So I know you guys have a big responsibility going on. And I'm sorry this had to happen to you guys, but I'm gonna be honest. I'll be honest, as a Navy Red Hill affected family member, thank you guys for being honest, coming out, and saying you guys are willing to stay on top of this. You guys did more than what the Navy did. And I ran the neighborhood watch for Pearl City Peninsula Navy Housing since 2018. I'm the one that introduced it and everything. I did so much for the community, for them out of Aloha. And they still, the admirals and captains still wasn't honest to me when I was asking questions about the water. So thank you. I mean, just please be honest and open to the local community too if they're concerned. Okay, aloha.
Thank you very much, everybody. Susie, number 2. And then Becca, you'll be next.
Hi, I'm Susan Gorman Chang. I live in Eva Beach. And my question is, and I support the community here. My question is, you said the labs were going to take 12 to 14 weeks.
Yes, ma'am.
What labs do you use?
I don't know the exact.
You don't know?
They're on the mainland, I can tell you that. I
Right.
don't know. There are several labs out there that do it, and all of them are under the same crunch. They're inundated with not just Army National Guard, but everyone is hitting them all at the same time.
So do you use Cyclopure?
Susan, I will get you that answer.
Okay. Do you ever use the lab called Cyclopure? That is a DOD lab
Not
that
I
the
know-
Department of Defense uses.
I don't know personally that we have.
You don't know?
No.
Okay. Because just as a test, I got a sample of my water and I sent it from Cyclopure. They gave me a little kit and they tested for 55 types of PFAS and they got it back to me within 2 weeks. And it cost $79. That's it. So maybe you want to check out that lab. I know the Department of Defense uses it. Yeah, and how many houses are in the drinking sample area? The area that you're sampling with the wells?
I think it's 50 to 60. if I
50 to
understand
60?
correctly.
Okay. And also, have you thought or put any announcements out about, we personally grow a lot of our own fruits and vegetables, and I don't know if this community does as well, but that would be using the water. Has there been any sort of announcement about that, about caution?
The EPA is only published for drinking water. We aren't authorized to actually speak on behalf of what's going on with agriculture.
Is the Department of Health allowed to talk about that? Who's here from the Department of Health?
Yeah, we actually, last week, I believe it was, we went down to the community and knocked on all of the doors in the neighborhood, all the ones we could locate, to share some information about this public meeting, and let them know about the PFAS. Now, the important thing to remember, as Lieutenant Colonel Hunsaker said, at this point we think there's a very, very slight chance that the PFAS that's been released from this site is impacting that area. So we are going to wait until we get the results of the drinking water well samples that are going to be collected before we make any further attempts to assess whether other water in that community needs to be further evaluated.
I see. And then I think it was Department of Health, right, in Kunia Village, you found PFAS water at 264.8 parts per trillion, and you said it wasn't a concern?
So,
And the EPA says 70 parts per trillion, and that may go down as the EPA reevaluates. So why would you say to the people of Kunia Village, when you tested water containing 264.8 parts per trillion, that it was not a concern?
that was a separate section, a separate branch of Department of Health. I'm with the Hazard Evaluation and Emergency Response Office. Safe Drinking Water Branch collected those samples.
So you guys have two different levels of safety?
So Safe Drinking Water Branch follows their own state and federal regulations.
Are they different than yours?
No, but somewhat.
Somewhat.
What they do is they're comparing, they compare concentrations of contaminants to the maximum contaminant level that's issued by the EPA. There is no maximum contaminant level for drinking water for PFAS.
Wasn't
So
that 70
it's
parts
sort of
per
a
trillion?
separate.
I'm really
I'll
confused.
let Diana take over here.
I'm Diana Felton. I'm a medical toxicologist with the Department of Health. I think I can clarify that a little bit. I think the exact wording, and again, this is challenging because it's exact wording, but I think the exact wording is it wasn't an immediate acute health risk.
Acute, but it could be
Acute.
chronic if people keep.
Exactly. It's still a concern and it's still a risk and there's still concern, but it's not going to make people sick today.
But it
That's
could
what
give
the
them
acute.
cancer if they continue to drink the water.
Over a lifetime, there is the possibility of that kind of health
I would
risk.
consider that concerning.
It is definitely concerning. It's a serious, important, concerning issue. It's absolutely concerning.
Yes, and I would just like to add that the announcement that went out, the news release that went out, it did state that although the levels, I don't remember the exact wording, but at the bottom of the announcement, I know it did say that the HERE office is going to continue to look into that because we have our own environmental action levels that were exceeded. And so we are looking into the issue at the Cunha Village.
What are your environmental action levels in parts per trillion?
I'm sorry?
What are your environmental action levels in parts per trillion?
They're the same as the EPA's regional screening
70.
levels. No, that's a health advisory level. They're very different.
Yes.
They're different, and this is a really complicated and challenging area to try to
I think you want
explain,
to
but they're
explain
different.
it to folks. This
I
is
can
their
try.
lives.
I'll do my best. Yeah. So let me just gather my thoughts for a second to make sure I try my best to explain it clearly, and please feel free to ask questions. The health advisory levels are published by EPA's Office of Water. And those are concentrations in the drinking water that if the value is above that level and you drink that water every day for a lifetime for 70 years, then there is the chance of health problems from that.
Like
as far
cancer
as we
and
know.
kidney issues.
There's
Cancer.
a number of them. There's more than that. If you got our handout on the back right-hand column lists some of the ones that we know the most about. But again, there's a lot of questions still, so it's not a complete list because research is still ongoing. Okay? So that's the health advisory levels. Okay? And those have only been published for 2 of the chemicals. Remember, there's thousands of these chemicals. So the health advisory levels have only been published for PFOA and PFOS. Okay. The screening levels are separate. The screening levels are published by the CERCLA and Superfund Office of EPA. And those are designed as target levels for cleanup. So as you're trying to clean up a site, you aim for below the screening levels. Because below the screening levels, no health impacts are anticipated below those screening levels. So that's what you aim for when you try to do a cleanup. So if you go and you look at a site and the levels are above the screening levels, then something needs to be done to clean up the site lower. The screening levels are not based on a lifetime of ingestion, that 70 years every day lifetime. What the screening levels are based on varies per chemical. And it has to do with what person is going to be the most sensitive to that chemical. In the case of our EALs, we use children. With screening levels, it can vary the amount of time that you look at. So our screening levels for PFAS are based on the risks to the most sensitive group, children, and for a 6-year exposure level, meaning drinking that water every day for 6 years, or being exposed to that soil every day for 6 years. So they're different parameters. So the screening levels for groundwater, for PFAS, for PFOA and PFOS, are actually lower than the health advisory levels. Okay, so it's a different goal of the tool. So questions about that?
So in Kunia Village, the drinking water containing 264.8 parts per trillion
Is too high.
is too high.
It's too high.
Okay.
It's too high for long-term exposure. So Department of Health, the Kunia Village Water Association, and I forget the exact name of the housing association that runs Kunia Village, have already started meeting and working together to try to figure out what to do for those residents so that they don't have long-term exposure to that water.
Are they still drinking the water?
I don't know the answer
You
to that.
don't know?
I do not know.
Does somebody else have a question? No? Okay. Go ahead, Becca, thank you. Oh, thank you.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak, not just to the officials, but to the community. My name is Rebecca Garrison, and I'm a white settler born and raised in Humboldt County, Northern California, visited the indigenous homelands of the people of the Yap and Soul peoples. First of all, I would like to say, discuss a little bit more about the need for a filtration system that can serve affected residents as a whole, rather than having individual houses pay for their own in-house filters. So my question is directed to the Department of Health. Regular people cannot afford another $40 to $80 per month on top of rent and everything else for water filters. Again, just because you are paid well and you can afford these things doesn't mean the vast majority of some of the hardest working people on Oahu can. And even if they did, filters would need to be disposed of responsibly. Will you advocate for a system-wide treatment options rather than burden residents whose health may be at risk to prevent even further harm to their bodies and families?
I'm sorry, in which situation here? We're talking about this particular site?
And all of them, all PFAS-related sites.
And what is it you're asking for?
The question is again, will you advocate for system-wide treatment options rather than burden residents whose health may be at risk to prevent even further harm to their bodies and families?
Well, I think that would be an ultimate goal if there's PFAS identified in a larger system to treat it at the source rather than by the individual residents. I don't know that we've really identified that anywhere yet, so
So
I think
that's the
that's
goal.
something we can advocate for.
Okay, thank you. And I'd just also like to hear some responses to the gentleman on the panel. Having the National Guard focus on gaining access to individual spigots attached to down gradient wells for testing is insufficient for larger community and environmental health and needs. Do you have a reaction to that?
Let me see if I got your question correctly. You're asking if we think it's sufficient to test those areas that we've selected as opposed to testing all the drinking water?
That's correct.
Okay. So based on the ground flow, we're going to any place that could possibly, that's reasonable to expect it to be there. So the areas that we selected are areas that have their own wells. On municipal wells, the water's already being tested, so all those homes wouldn't be affected. In addition, we're testing the areas that do have drinking wells, and if we collect more data that suggests our AFFF has moved in that direction, we will absolutely test those areas. But we have to have data to support it. We just don't have, we need to have evidence that something has moved that way in order to test the water in that specific area. It wouldn't make sense, for example, to test on the opposite end of the on the island, because there's no way for the PFAS to have traveled that far. So we have to limit the area, and we're expanding it to anything that remotely can be possible. As we go through the CERCLA process, if we get more data that says our areas move further, we will absolutely test in those areas.
And does the Department of Health have a reaction?
Again, what was the question?
Having the National Guard focus on gaining access to just individual spigots attached to downgradient wells for testing is insufficient for larger community and environmental health and needs. Do you agree?
Well, speaking to this particular issue, I think sampling the spigots where people are getting drinking water is the appropriate action. Now, across the entire island, you're talking about, each location is going to be treated differently when and if PFAS is detected there. But I don't know that there's any island-wide treatment we can do until PFAS is detected.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Susan? Okay.
I just have a couple of questions, and I'll keep it brief and concise. My name is Andre Perez. I live in Waiawa, Makai, on Waiawa Road. I've been living there for 12 years, and I just have some direct questions. I lived in a house on Waiawa Road that was on a well, and I'm very disappointed to hear the 6-year number because I drank water from that well for 6 years. That's how long I lived there. I still live in Waiawa, but I no longer live in the house that was on the well. But I'd like to get that well tested, and I know the owners. So what is the, I'm sorry, I was sitting here, but I still don't comprehend a clear pathway to get the well tested. Is there a phone number I can have, or do I gotta navigate a website and some kind of dashboard on that website? How do I get the well tested?
So we got the names of the well owners working through the Corps of Engineers. If you can give us the name, the owner,
Yep.
phone number, email, then we can make sure that the rights of
Can you
entry
take a note
request
right
get-
now?
I can do it right in the back.
Okay,
Right
okay,
after
I'll
this.
meet you right in back.
Andre, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do that, sir.
Okay, and then what I want to know is, can people be tested for long-term exposure? People, human beings.
Yep.
Thank you.
So yes is the answer.
Okay.
It's not easy is the bad part of the answer.
Okay.
And there's a lot of sort of caveats about it. So your doctor can order PFAS blood testing. It's not covered by insurance. It costs a lot. So those are a lot of barriers. But the other problem is that the results don't tell you, they tell you if you've been exposed, if you have PFAS in your blood, but they don't tell you where those PFAS came from, and they don't tell you if any of your health symptoms might be related. And there's also no numbers that say if your level's X, then you're gonna have these health impacts. They can help you put yourself on sort of the graph of people that we know have high exposures, like people who work in PFAS factories, for example. So you can kind of stratify yourself among people with really high exposures or sort of the average level of blood PFAS. So it's not going to give all the answers, but for some people it can be helpful to know what their levels are.
Absolutely. So if you folks find certain wells that may have high levels, has there been any discussion on what kind of liability the Army is going to assume for these kinds of tests, or for how they're going to remediate these wells?
As far as remediation, you're asking what liability are we taking? I mean, the first step we've already reiterated, we're going to supply the drinking water initially. And then the rest of it will come later as far as clean up the area. That'll be based on the remedial investigation, what information did we come up with, and what is the best way to do it. And one of those possibilities is a whole house system that we would pay for sure, but that's one of many possibilities. There are other ways, and we'd approach it, well, what is the best solution for this set of circumstances after we collect all the data.
Understand. So what I'm trying to get at is there is some discussion about liability in terms of human impacts, in terms of impacts to entire homes. Like I know you have to test the wells and determine if this particular property is impacted. But once you determine that, like if you determine that the well where I lived is contaminated, do you think the Army is going to pay for me to get the PFAS tests?
The Army will not. However, there are how do I answer this best?
That's not good news.
again, we will supply the water, we will make sure that you're getting clean drinking water. But as far as liability, that's a separate, that's not the Army. There is a way to get the federal government involved, and that's a different process. It's very convoluted and complicated, and it's not really something that I understand because it's not something that we deal with. Once we do the testing, if we come up with the results that we have put the PFAS down into your well, then we will push you over to that area where they can deal with and answer those questions for you.
I think it'd be a good idea at least to get some preliminary info from that area to answer these questions when you come into the community. It's concerning to me that I may have been exposed to PFAS on a well, and I have neighbors who are on wells as well in this room. It's concerning to me that I may have been exposed to it potentially for 6 years, and that the answer I'm hearing right now is how can I get tested to find out if I have PFAS in my bloodstream? And the answer is, well, the Army's not going to pay for it, or we may push you over to some nebulous other area. And I understand, but what I want to say is get that information here in the room so that the community, we can get these questions answered. My last question is, you know, I remember an issue with the Army some years ago, not that long ago, maybe 15 years ago, surrounding the use of depleted uranium at Lehue, at Schofield. And that was a big issue. And for many, many years, the Army denied that they used depleted uranium. And then they found it on the training sites. And I was in the military. I'm a vet. I was a range controller. I know how training ranges work. And they should have absolutely known if there was DU. In fact, I know that they knew there was DU. You don't use depleted uranium and not use it. You don't use depleted uranium and not know about it, right? So the Army said, oh, we don't use depleted uranium. Well, there was a lot up there. And then some of the toxicology reports that came out talked about depleted uranium as a heavy metal getting absorbed into food plants like taro, like kalo, which is a primary food plant here. And of course, if we know where Schofield is, we know that the water moves down towards Waialua, where there's lots of taro farms. So is there any knowledge around PFAS being absorbed into food crops and impacts there? Hot seat.
So it's an area of intense research right now. I would say that we don't have any definitive information on that. There is evidence that some of the PFAS chemicals can get taken up into plants, but which ones and how much you need to have in the soil before it gets into the food crop and which food crop is still unknown at this time. But being researched, but that's not an answer.
Okay. Yeah. Well, if I could suggest, you might want to focus some of the research particular to Oahu, to taro, because that's a primary plant that grows in water, primary food crop. That's it. Thank you. Mahalo. And I really hope, I just want to say this in closing, and this is for the community just as much as it is for you folks. The military, historically, the military in general, has taken up a very large footprint in Hawaii. We are the most militarized state with over 140 military installations in Hawaii, and the military occupies a large portion of our land base. Too much. And so what I want to put a call out to you folks and for the community to start thinking about, to start organizing around is, and for me, as I'm an organizer, and I know that, you know, we want to reach for the sky in our goals and objectives, but we also got to think about what's winnable, what's attainable in bite-sized chunks, whatever. But what I want to start by saying is that we need to start calling for the military to start downsizing their footprint in Hawaii and deoccupying some of our lands that are no longer critical or not even being used by the military. It's time to start downsizing, and I think that's the message that we should all be saying. It's time to start downsizing now, you know. And ultimately, you know, my goal as a Hawaiian is the occupation of our country and the restoration of sovereignty and independence, which we have. So thank you for your time. Mahalo.
Thank you, Andre. Andre, you were on the Mauna, right?
Yes.
I met you up there as well.
Right on.
Are there any other residents that want the microphone?
Aloha, my name is Sam, and we're tenants on Waiawa Road. We are AINA educators, and we're taro farmers, and very concerned. No one came to talk to us about our well. And our well not only feeds our family, we not only drink from it all the time, but we also feed our community. So if we're talking about drinking water, I'd like to propose that you guys actually even talk about looking into what Andre said, into farms. Yeah, there's a lot of farms on Waiawa Road. And if we're looking back historically on farmers who've been there and who've possibly been exposed, we're grappling today with exposing others. Yeah, today we had a group, two students, 100 students on site today. And when we heard the news last night, we were on the fence to even cancel the group because of this, right? How could we really, truly welcome everybody to the space and give them taro and fish that we farm and we grow and feed them with possible contamination, right? And so I hear that you say it's only for drinking water, but what about farmers that we drink and we also feed everybody else? And if it comes back that high at the 70%, you're gonna offer bottled water for us to run our whole farm.
We pump about 100 gallons a minute.
Feed our lo'i patches and our local ER, fish
Out of
ponds.
one well.
So,
We cannot use your bottled water. We don't like your bottled water. It's time for you guys to go. Time for you guys to go.
Thank you. Danielle? I got two names and then,
And you guys like some water. I get water from my well. You go drink them. Huh? You go drink them. You like one sip? Huh? I give you a sip. You like? Like some? No. You go drink them. That's why I'm saying. Nobody like. Nobody thirsty. What about you? You like some?
I don't, sir. Thank you.
Why? Today I drink this, I bathe in this every day. But you guys don't understand, bro. You're messing with our resources. So you guys telling us it's okay. It's okay. You don't like none. That's what.
Danielle? Any residents that want to talk? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harley. I live on Waiawa Road near Andre, who spoke earlier. I just have a question about 12 to 14 weeks is a really, really long time to be waiting for results. My son is 3 now, and I don't want him to drink this water one more day. If it's contaminated, he's been drinking contaminated water all of his life. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that can be done in that 12 to 14 week period. If you guys can give us something before then, otherwise we're just waiting in vain for you to tell us whether or not we're drinking crap water, or if we're drinking bad water. If I'm giving my son from the moment he was born water that's been contaminated. So I just want to know, are we just going to be waiting 12 to 14 weeks and then all of a sudden if we're contaminated, then yeah, you'll give us bottled water, but otherwise we're just waiting until then. We're going to drink it for 12 to 14 more weeks.
So what you're asking is there anything we can do in the interim? And the correct answer is no, we can't. However, we don't have a reason to suspect that it has got that far. We're doing this out of caution. And the other piece that we're looking at is we're talking acute risk versus chronic. And so I would kind of have to
I
refer
heard
some
the
of that-
presentation, I know. I know what
And-
you're saying.
Unfortunately, we are tied to legal authority that comes from Congress, and we
I
can't supply it
understand.
until 10 weeks. And we're going to move it as quick as we can. If we
I
can
get
move
how
it
it
quicker,
all works.
we
I
will
went
do
to
it.
law school, I understand.
Okay.
I just wanted to know if there can be anything done before then, because right now you're telling me that the water could be contaminated, and He's been drinking that all his life. I've been drinking that for the 4 years I've been living here. And so I have to drink it to 12 to 14 more weeks until you can tell me whether or not it's okay. And regardless, it might not be okay whether it's above or below 70. And so your answer is there's nothing that can be done.
Yes.
Okay. My second question is, my water is also connected to a private well, just like Andre. And so I'm wondering, we weren't told about this meeting, and I don't know if it's maybe because our gate was closed, or maybe you told our private well owner, but how will we know that if you even test our water, and if the water does come back with bad results, are you going to tell us, or are you going to tell our private well owner, who you may not know who will tell us or not?
We will absolutely, anyone that's on that well, we will notify, absolutely.
Personally, regardless of what the private well owner does or says?
Correct. Any user of that well, we'll absolutely notify.
Okay, because we weren't notified so far.
Yep, we mailed out requests to get permission to come on and test to the well owners, and we have to let that process go. And that's another, it takes time, but that did go out. But if we get the well owners, if you have well owner information tonight, we can also contact them and make sure they get it another way or push them. Now, once the well owner says yes, we can go test the well, we're going to test the spigot at your house. We're going to coordinate with you, and so you also will get the results.
Okay, thank you.
If I can just speak quickly to that as well. Thank you very much for coming out here. There are a lot of homes in that community, and we did go out and knock on doors and try to reach out to everybody, but obviously not everybody was home.
What time did you go? Because if you went during the working day, of course no one was going to be home.
Yes, and we did leave, we hung some flyers on doors, but we may not have managed to get to all of them, but I'm glad that you got the message anyway.
From Hill, Lenny Richardson, yeah.
But it is confusing. We're not exactly sure where all the wells we know where the wells are located, but we don't know which homes get water from which wells. And so that's information that that the National Guard is going to try to gather as they're going out there and collecting the samples. The other thing that's important to mention is they're only sampling waters, wells, spigots, where the residents are drinking the water, or they have drunk the water in the past, or they occasionally drink the water. So it's important that when they come to ask you, are you using the water? What are you can explain to them what you're using the water for,
Mm-hmm.
and try to give them the information about, if you know it, which well you're getting your water from, or who's the owner of the well that you're getting the water from, so they can make sure, like he said, if they discover that your spigot does have PFAS, which is a very low probability, but if they discover that, they can come right to you and help you out.
Okay, thank you.
If you can see us later, and in the back, if we can get your owner's contact info, we can work with that.
And if you can also share with other community members that information, that we want to gather that information. Thank you very much.
Are there any other residents who would like to speak? And you can always come up later. Danielle signed up, if Danielle wanted to talk.
Hello, mai kako. Aloha, mai kako. My name is Danielle Espiritu. I live in Waimalu in the Moko of Eva. I want to start off by saying, and just a reminder to all of us, that there's no level of cancer-causing chemicals that's acceptable in our water. It's never been, for millennia. Yeah, for millennia, that has never been a thing. So as we have reiterated to the Navy, there's no level of petroleum that's acceptable, there's no level of PFAS that's acceptable, and I think it's important for us to remember, as we're talking about timelines and as we're talking about testing, that these have been classified as quote-unquote forever chemicals. So yeah, we might test today, or we might test next year, but they will never disappear. So really, we're talking about causing cancer for kids 500 years from now. And let's remember that as we talk about remediation, and as we talk about what kind of health repercussions will come out of this. In your presentation, sir, you said that we will do everything we can within the law. I have a clarifying question. Does that mean that you will do only what the law requires you to do, or that you will do everything in your power so long it is not illegal?
Thank you for the question. I do appreciate that, and it is definitely the latter. We will do everything that the law allows us to do.
So why is it that she cannot get water in the next 12 to 14 weeks for her family? Is it illegal for you to provide water to her?
Yes, it is.
It's illegal.
Not illegal. It's against. You're
The way the rules we're bound by right now, it would be a fiscal law violation.
Fiscal law violation to provide water while people are awaiting testing to determine if their water is poisoned.
Unfortunately, yes.
Wow, okay. Thank you for clarifying. Is it illegal to test streams and springs?
No.
So has that happened already?
That is part of the remedial investigation, and it will take place going forward, yes. If the data the data we're collecting says we need to start testing off-site, so we will start doing that.
So it's not been done yet, to clarify?
No, because we just barely got done with the site inspection, and now we have data that says, yes, there's something here, so we're going to expand that until we find the extent of anything that's left the site, if it has.
So in that report that will come out in March, so next month, will that indicate the timeline and where all of that testing will take place, or is that still to be studied?
I mean, in order to know how far, we can't tell how far we're going to go until we start doing the testing. So we will test close to the fence, and we'll go, if it's still there, we will expand. And if it's still there, then we'll continue to expand until we see how far it has moved.
And has testing already been done on Waiawa Stream, because that was right next to the facility?
We have not left our own property because we haven't got authority to do so yet from the homeowners or whoever owns the property there. And that's part of the remedial investigation, and because we met the screening levels, that is our next step.
Hey, Danielle,
So we will do that, yes.
The site investigation and the report that's gonna come out is not gonna have anything off-site yet. It's only gonna be what was tested on-site. So we don't have any results, we haven't tested anything beyond our boundaries.
But is there a plan for where those testing sites will take place?
That'll be done by AECOM. They will take all the data from us, and they will start putting it together and come up with a logical place to track down how far, if it has moved, how it's gone. So it's done based on science. We see the groundwater is moving. They're going to want to track that and see where it has, if it has moved. And so unless we do those tests, we don't know which direction it's going, so we don't know how far out we're going to test. But that data will be released, and it'll be like, yeah, we found it, so we're moving out further. Or we didn't find it, so there's no reason to continue downstream.
There's no reason to continue, even though we're talking about forever chemicals that will never disappear. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. That's what we're talking about here.
I understand what you're saying, and there's as part of the CERCLA process, there is ongoing monitoring that can go on indefinitely if it is required or justified by the data collected.
I'll look for your response. Will there be compensation for folks like Sam and Ron or Andre or others who are raising their families and feeding community off of this? Will there be compensation in terms of folks that, you know, God forbid, like may need to move after this? Is there going to be any kind of monetary compensation for health, for relocation, for effects to business? Yeah, there's watercress farmers in this area. There's mo'olelo of Eva. Yeah, where Kane and Kanaloa are going throughout this entire moku, this entire district, with o'o, and they plunge it into the ground, and out of that comes springs. That tells us that it's all connected underground. So whatever enters the aquifer is gonna end up in the ocean, is gonna end up in the different streams, and eventually it will spread. Like our mo'olelo tell us that, and the things that we kilo on a daily tell us that. And so my question is, what kind of compensation are you going to provide to this community?
As far as compensation is concerned, what we're going to focus on is figure out how far it's gone, and we're going to deal with that contamination after we find the results. So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves at this point, and these are questions to ask as we continue on. And there are many opportunities where we'll invite the community back as we collect more data to ask these questions. But at this point, we're still trying, PFAS is very new. There's a lot of information we're still learning about it. And as far as things are, so we don't know all the health benefits as was mentioned earlier. So we have to gather more information before we can answer all of these questions. But there are things within the CERCLA process that allow for that, but we have to collect the data first, and those are things that I can't commit to right now because, again, we don't have the data.
And so what happens if people get sick while you're doing your studies? If we're feeding our community from
If we
these
sample the water, which we're going to do, and you are exceeding the health advisories, then we are going to supply bottled water. And this would be a better
You
thing.
cannot feed a lo'i on bottled water. I'm sorry.
I understand your concerns, I really do.
Do you?
I do. I grew up in Idaho. It's very much a desert. The water is our lifeblood. I completely appreciate your concerns.
Okay. Oye, vale, no mano.
Thank you.
Wayne?
Call me after all the names have been.
You
Yes,
after
ma'am.
Wayne. You be right after Wayne.
Wayne Tanaka with the Circle of Hawaii. Just had a few questions. I appreciate your folks coming out here and being proactive, and at least acknowledging that there is this contamination issue. Just wondering if you have any information about what the other branches of the Department of Defense are doing, like Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force. Like we know that, as you said, anywhere that there's fuel, you're gonna be finding is AFFF to control fires if they break out.
I really can't speak to what they're doing. I know they have to follow the same regulations we do, but as far as specific sites, I don't track the sites of the other organizations, so I really can't comment on that.
Is that something that, since you're in the DoD and it's one department, is that some information that you can help gather for the community so we understand where else we might want to start being proactive?
He's actually with the Army National Guard specific, so he doesn't have
I would not
access.
have access to those.
But, if you can leave that question on my website, or I can get it tonight, I can give you the other public affairs personnel who are dealing with this right now. So I can get you that information. But we don't know the status of it, because unless it's public and it doesn't share, but they have to follow the exact same process we do. They're gonna have to do a preliminary assessment. They're gonna have to do a site inspection, and those reports, once complete, are published and public.
Okay.
And so you'll be able to see it.
But as far as you know, you're not, as far as you know, you have no idea where they are in this process.
Every site that we have for my process is a different stage. We have several hundred sites going across the country, and I would assume they're in the same boat. So it depends on, there's so many variables with every single site, and so I would have no idea what's going on with the Army or the Navy.
Okay. All right. I would think maybe you folks would want to be consistent about the responses to the contamination. Do you have a good contaminant transport model for the specific area? I guess I'm assuming not, since you're just trying to figure out where this stuff is, right?
That is actually developed during the remedial investigation.
Okay, and so until that's complete, which could be years, right? If you find it and you gotta go expand, you gotta do another remedial. So, is there a commitment to continually test these wells, because we don't know how this contamination is migrating? We don't know if there's a plume that has not yet hit the groundwater. Just because you sample once now doesn't mean necessarily that in the future there could be.
Of course, that is absolutely part of the process.
Okay. Sorry. And then I was just wondering if has there been are there particular health screenings that people can do to at least look for catch some of the chronic conditions that we know are associated with PFAS exposure?
That's a great question. In addition, you're talking to what I mentioned earlier about how there is blood testing, but it doesn't necessarily tell you the answers. Is that?
Yeah,
or
we know that some cancers you want to catch it earlier rather than later, things like that.
So a lot of the health problems that have been linked to PFAS, long-term PFAS exposure, are other health problems that people are screened for regularly as well. So for instance, PFAS are known to cause, long-term exposure to PFAS can cause increased cholesterol levels. So, regular health maintenance, getting your cholesterol tested, very important. Of course, there's other things that contribute to your cholesterol as well, what you eat, your genetics, if you exercise. So it's a very like multifactorial kind of equation, but that is part of sort of regular health screening. There is some recommendations that came out, I think it was September, it might have been June of last year, from the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine that actually made recommendations for doctors based on PFAS blood levels of increased types of screenings for particular problems that are associated with PFAS. So if your PFAS blood level is between X and Y of a combination of the chemicals, then you should have increased screening for kidney cancer, for example, or for, I'm trying to remember exactly the other ones, for preeclampsia or pregnancy-induced hypertension if you're a pregnant woman. So there is growing information about that to guide doctors about how to increase screening for patients that have higher levels. Right now, as far as I know, that's only being used mostly for people that have occupational risks, so that are exposed to these chemicals at higher levels in their jobs. So like firefighters, for example, or people that work in PFAS factories or paper mills or places where there's really high levels. So that area of guidance and recommendation is really growing fast. It's very controversial, of course, no one agrees, but there is growing information for how to increase screening for people that have been exposed to these chemicals.
Is there are there like accessible ways to get those developing research, like just on the DOH website, or is there somewhere people can go to kind of get up to speed now that this is becoming a real issue for?
Yeah, so I believe that paper from NASEM, the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, about the guidance for the doctors, I think that's linked on our DOH website. I'll check on Monday, and if it's not there, I'll add it, but I'm pretty sure it's there on our PFAS website.
And then speaking of the occupational hazards, has there been any, what's happening to the workers that may have been exposed? Like the folks that were training with this AFFF back when we didn't know how dangerous it was.
As far as PFAS is concerned, the only health advisory is for drinking it. And so if they were firefighters and testing it, they would have shielding on and should not have ingested any. So, with anything else, they're in the military, so they're going to have regular access to health care and be screened for many things. But there shouldn't have been an issue because they shouldn't be drinking it.
And we also talked to the mechanics who worked on the machine, and they asked that exact question. So as long as they weren't ingesting it, they were okay. They could still clean the tank and touch it.
Okay. Okay. I guess the last, just to clarify, so on the DOH website, the HIR office PFAS information page, it does talk about health advisories, so the EPA interim health advisory, according to the DOH website, is the health advisory is currently at 0.0402 parts per trillion for PFOA, and then 0.002 parts per trillion for PFOS, which is so for PFOA, which is the lesser of the toxic PFAS, or is it P?
Yeah. I get so mixed up. So reference on the backside of this tangent. So PFOA is considered the most toxic.
Okay.
And it has the lowest of the.
Okay, so PFOS, nice. So at 0.02 ppt, that's like 3,500 times less than the 70 parts per trillion that's going to trigger the bottled water. Under an interim, it's interim guidelines, right? So, it's actually the current health advisories that we have is 3,500 times lower than what's being used as a trigger for bottled water.
Is that a question?
Does that make sense? I just want to clarify, since.
So you're saying that the levels that DOH has is way lower than 70 parts per trillion?
No, the levels at the EPA, the interim health advisories under the EPA is like 20 parts per quadrillion, and the trigger for bottled water will be 70 parts per trillion. So I just wanted to clarify that that's the case.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Go ahead, ma'am. Oh, you know what, ma'am, I'm sorry. Can we get Susan? Susan, you've been waiting patiently. Come on up. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry, I have just a few more that sprung up in my head when I was listening to everybody else. You stated that the testing will take from 12 to 14 weeks to get the results back. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, ma'am.
So, we don't know the results. We don't know what's going on. Why wouldn't you supply drinking water, bottled water, before the results come back, since nobody knows what, okay? It's a suggestion that you think about, go to the well, test the well, and then the people are going, well, we got 12 to 14 weeks. Okay, that's that. The other thing is you were talking about on the website, you'll be posting the sampling and the results of the sampling. And it would be nice to see the the exact parts per trillion, regardless of if it was below 70 parts per trillion, rather than saying does not exceed.
No, you will have the exact reading.
Perfect. And out of the 50 to 60 homes, I don't know how many you've contacted. I understand that
About
that's
20,
where you went.
Only about 20.
Okay, well, you also should be letting us know how many people are in that 50 to 60 homes. Inside of the homes, we got multi-generational families, and so, you know, you've got Keiki, but you got Kapuna. That's the way we live here. Nobody can buy homes. So, I mean, it's important for you to also take those types of things into consideration when you're looking at, regardless of if it's a known health effect or not, it's still something that is a variable in any of the findings that you get. Thank you.
Thank you very
Yes,
much.
ma'am.
Go ahead, Larry.
Well, Colonel and staff, thank you for being here today, especially here at Pearl City. For everybody here, I'm Larry Verret. I'm chair of the Pearl City Neighborhood Board. And I'll be honest with you, I care about water. It hurts me when I hear some of the things here. I never thought this would happen here because I am still trying to react to what happened at Red Hill. And as that flume is working its way here, Tuesday when you come to my meeting, you'll see that I got a resolution going to Congress asking for more funding to compensate all the families that were impacted by the fuel spill. And when I say compensated, not pay for their per diem, not pay for the taxes that they, but the other thing is long-term effects. But I just want to say, first of all, these guys, I'm so proud of them coming up here early to let us know, yes, we got a problem. It's not what they wanted, but we're stuck with it. We got to identify the scope of this situation, and then step by step, who got impacted. I'm sitting here listening, and the first thing I'm thinking metrics. And I do care about the military, I do trust you, but the other thing, the word trust has got to be earned, and there's been a lot of trust lost lately. So I'm hoping creativity with our citizens to do some parallel testing and also involvement, metrics gathering. We got UH, we got Leeward Community College. Let's bring them in on this, and let's help the Army out here too. Let's work with them and find out the scope. But I'm telling you that if any of our citizens here in Pearl City are impacted in any way, I'm going to be there to help fight for compensation. And I have a resolution that hopefully my board will sign on Tuesday. But the other thing is to help Ernie Lau, because he needs money to drill wells, because I'm concerned about that fuel spill heading to Pearl City. And now we got this situation. So I got two areas we got to watch. And of course, we need to test our vegetables and fruits too. We're not going to wait till later. We know there's a problem. Let's start gathering the fruits and that, and then we work together. And I'm going to ask, just like we do with the Navy, they come to the Pearl City Neighborhood Board every month and they give us a report on Red Hill and all that. I'm going to ask that you all, I'll put you on the agenda, and that way we can let the community know the status as you guys are going along. And And I'm sure the community's gonna help you too, reach out to residents, we gotta let everybody know. And then we got, these metrics are so important, because what you find is gonna help us determine to go back through those kapuna that we lost over the last 10 years, to find out if any of them were impacted and what caused their deaths. And I always worry about my Navy families in Pearl Harbor area, because you don't know those long-term effects. I'm a survivor of Vietnam, Agent Orange. I got 36% lung capacity, and I gotta live with that the rest of my life. So I can imagine everybody else, you don't know what's gonna happen, especially with your kids. So anyway, thank you, and we're gonna work with you close.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. Ma'am,
Oh, you're up.
So Aloha, I had the question up earlier, but this was regarding the epidemiologists on island. They wanted to know when is that information going to be provided? And they just found out about it today. The CDC, yeah.
Sorry, what information?
Shucks, it erased the comment and I don't think she's on anymore. But this is affected family member about the person on island for affected family members, affected people, something about a CDC.
My name is Mia Lisa. DHA said today that the epidemiologists from the CDC are on island now. Why are you not telling the impacted families? Why are they on island? How do impacted families participate in the study and get information on what's being studied?
Yeah, sure, I can answer that. So that's not related to this episode, that's related to Red Hill. That's a follow-up, what we call an EPI-aid from CDC. The Defense Health Agency asked CDC to send epidemiologists out to review medical records from the military health system medical record for people that have had medical problems related to Red Hill, including people who have been seen at the Red Hill Clinic over the past couple months, but also going back over the last year.
Is the Red Hill Clinic working?
The Red Hill Clinic has seen, I don't know the exact numbers, but over 50 people. As far as the satisfaction from the people that have been there, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not part of the Red Hill Clinic. But the CDC team that is here is doing a complete review of the medical records of people impacted by Red Hill over the past 14, almost 15 months now. So that's why they're here on island right now. They're not doing a health survey like they did the first 2 times. There's not public participation in this. It's purely a review of the medical records from the military health system.
But they should be, because this is an ongoing issue and it has spread, so they should be reviewing everything that's affected on the water, right?
Right now, their job right now is to review the health records. They are continuing to work with the Defense Health Agency about a long-term health registry of people that were exposed to the water. That's the extent of what I know at this point.
Okay. And then for Department of Health, are you by law able to distribute water or have a volunteer group that does already?
I don't have any water to distribute. I don't
Bottled
know.
water, like purchase water and donate to families that, ahead of time.
Yeah, we don't have funding for that. I don't know where that would come from.
You don't have like a nonprofit or?
No.
Okay.
We
Thank you.
work for the state.
And so my personal comments are, where you said it's going to be illegal, that you can't provide even bottled water to affected families while you're waiting for the test results. Now, if you can, why can't you do an allotment? Or why can't, it has to be through specific means. You know the issues and the health effects on the people. Why can't something as donating water for the affected people, affected family be available? If, for example, the Makahiki event where you can provide all this water and food for like the tourists so they can learn about Native Hawaiian Kanaka culture here. I mean, we're talking about health, the health of the people and the residents on island. It should not be hard. It should not have to go through so many loopholes and so many processes just to get clean water to the people. And then when you're thinking about it now, we as people have mentioned, we never had to think about the quality of our water. On the way down, I had to Uber. I was speaking to the Uber driver from Poland. He understood, and he says, you know, this is what's so great about Hawaii. You can, just from the tap, drink your water. And I had to tell him where I was going, to a meeting talking about this, not the Red Hill, now this Waiawa. So when you say that you really, really, really want to do the best that you can, you're going to do everything possible. I'm just going to restate this. 2027, 2029, then the leases are up. That's the best way. That's the best thinking you can do for our health. You cannot expect us to live on bottled water when we're in the place of the cleanest water ever. We cannot just keep remediating. You have to stop the source of the problem, which is the militarization of Hawaii. The best thing you can do, literally, is to, when leases are up, just like the Air Force on Molokai, start cleaning up years ahead so that you can return the land to the people so we can have fresh, clean water. Mahalo.
Nobody else has signed up, so if anybody wants to go ahead and ask a question, please.
Diana Felton. Sorry, it's just, I know, because I've been the whistleblower for our Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing to help our residents. And I've been one of the stronger voices during this whole entire Navy Red Hill. This is my first time ever seeing you in person. So it's interesting, and it's like, I was kind of like, not scared, but I was scared to fall into like another panic attack. But anyway, so I have some concerns regarding the health and everything, right? So being that I have been hearing a lot of our Navy Red Hill affected families, and this is pretty much, should be the warning sign for these Pearl City residents as well, okay? Because we don't know what it was, but a lot of these residents got that toxicologist, that tox screening that you didn't believe in since March 2022, that you warned our doctors on island-wide. We got that.
Recommended, yeah.
And
Not recommended for Red Hill.
I had to warn hundreds of my ohana here on the island and my island friends that no, there is such a test where these Pearl City and Waiawa residents can go ahead and they can go too, but it's going to be out of pocket, a lot of money, to get these tox screenings done. Well, because PFAS was found in some of these families, thyroid is one of the concerns, cancer, another. There's a lot of health problems, and these families just moved here to Hickam Air Force Base in November 2021. So that's short term, short term. And like I said, I'm born and raised from this island, but when I became a Navy wife in 2005, I was working at the Navy Exchange in their office, and I was eating all their foods, drinking their soft drinks, and eating at other, and especially moving back home to the island in 2015. For 7 years, I've been going to other people's homes, all in the Navy drinking water line, and eating their foods, drinking their coffee, drinking their hot cocoa. So it's more than just drinking water and taking showers and all that in your house. It's wherever now the Waiawa water exists for you guys. For me, I gotta stay away from the Navy drinking water line. But I just had to share this, Diana, because it hurts me that you had to put that advisory letter out to our doctors. And that's not the aloha spirit, you know what I mean? Because I was born in 1970s on this island. And I learned from my elders, always got to be respectful. Always got to be respectful and share that Hawaiian hospitality, that island hospitality, even if it's different from your beliefs. You know, I implemented that 17 years as a Navy wife from 2005 up until 2021. Until this day, I still do it for our Pearl City Peninsula neighbor residents, Pearl City Peninsula Navy housing residents. you have to have that balance. You have to be fair. I understand that's your knowledge, your education. But please, as your kuleana, you being here on Oahu, you adapting and everything here on the Hawaiian Islands, you have to be that change. You have to be different. I didn't come here to waste my time. I wasn't going to speak up because I'm trying to take a huge break from the Navy radio. But I'm going to be tuning in more to my 80s and 90s music. But I'm just saying, Diana, seriously, man, this is affecting us as affected families for the Navy Red Hill. Now we got this new thing. And then now there's the Waipahu. And then I heard you speaking about the Waipahu, the Waikele, the Waipio water back during the holiday season from ending of December 2022 into New Year's Eve 2023. I was hurt that you said even with low PFAS, it does not cause any health problems.
No, I never said that. I don't believe that that's not true. I wouldn't say it doesn't cause health problems. We know it. I wrote this about the health problems it causes.
So even with the low, even with your folks' guidelines, the high, that's too high for our Hawaiian Islands, the EPA, EAL levels for EPA and your folks, it's still going to cause, even if it's under, it's still going to cause health problems, right?
No, the levels are the levels right now, the levels have let me explain. Try to explain. The EALs, the screening levels, are based on the best available science that we have. Okay? They're based, so can't say they're 100%. They're based on the best available science that we have. Based on that information, if the level in the soil or the level in the water is below that screening level, no health impacts are anticipated. Okay? That's what the screening levels mean. But do we know that's 100%?
Yeah.
No, we don't.
Okay.
And the research is still happening, and we're still all learning, and it's changing every single day. Before coming to this meeting, I went and looked up at the latest because it could have changed from yesterday. So this is very rapidly changing, and difficult to. It's just difficult to know what it's going to be.
Okay.
So when Wayne mentioned the new EPA screening levels, I'm not sure if Wayne's still here. Oh, yeah, he's still here. When he mentioned the new EPA screening levels, that they're interim, they are interim. They haven't been finalized yet. They're still under scientific review. Okay. But the fact that they are so much lower tells me that these chemicals, the newest information is showing that these chemicals are more and more harmful over a long period of exposure. And so we still have a lot to know.
Because I have been working at the Navy Exchange since 2005 on the drinking water line and eating all kinds of people's
But
foods.
it's all of us being exposed to these chemicals in lots of different ways. In our drinking water in some cases.
Yeah.
In our pizza boxes and our popcorn, and these chemicals are really prevalent, and in the water is the biggest concern because that's how you get the most.
Yeah.
So, that's
the
why the
soil.
water has like the highest concern, because that's how the most gets into your body.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I would never say that these don't cause health problems.
Okay.
They do.
Okay.
They absolutely do.
Okay. Thank
And
you.
if I could just
Thank you
add-
for clarifying. This was healing for me. I just had to let you know, as a Navy affected family member, I'm so sorry because I have not ever spoken to Diana, and we the affected families, we are so angry with her, and my birth state, Department of Health, we're so irritated, and EPA, it's like you guys are supposed to be protecting us. You guys were so you guys helped us with our schools, vaccinations, with restaurants and everything, passing, failing, and also with the COVID. Did I say the COVID? And it's like, it's like we need you guys. I was hoping since December, man, I cried on the phone to you folks. Whoever answered the phone lines back in late December 2021, I cried and I said, please fight for us, please. And you guys kind of like sided with EPA and the Navy. It kind of really hurted me. So speaking to Diana, I'm so sorry to give up time. It's like healing for me. I'm going to be honest, as the way I did with the Navy. So please let our Navy Red Hill. Okay. 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 But please, sirs, let the Navy Red Hill be your folks' life lessons, do's and don'ts. I mean, I am, like I said earlier, I'm so proud that you guys are stepping up, standing up and speaking to us early on and not kind of like too much gaslighting like how the Navy was doing to us, you know? As for our Pearl City residents that's going to hear this later on or whatever, or that are still here, and our local residents here on Oahu, you guys need to watch the movie Dark Waters, because that's about PFAS. I watched that 6 times because of my favorite actor. But that's about PFAS, and this goes back to 1970s. All right, aloha.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, ma'am.
Aloha kākou a pau mai ka pina I ka lai hai ka la velo ole hua ano ai ke aloha. My heart hurts. This isn't even my aina. I'm from Mauna Lua, which is Hawaii Kai. I'm not Hawaii Kai. I'm Mauna Lua born. You hear our names of our ahupua'a, Waikele, Waipio, Waipahu, Waianai, Waiawa. Why? What is that? It's water. That's my ancestors. This might not be my aina over here, but as Kanaka in this place, and you came in here, it's not your fault. Thank you for being present. But when the military first started coming here and axing my family members, our ohana, and we sit idle for 130 years, just sitting and sitting. Fuel here, Haleakala there, Waiawa here, Red Hill there. Waiawa goes all the way to Mauna Lua. And you're gonna check little by little by little by little. I don't know all these PFAS and levels and things, but why should I have to know? This is my aina. We had the cleanest water from Haloa. That was all of our kupuna who are Kanaka in this room. That is our ancestor. We didn't have to worry about lepo things in water, like brother and sister that are feeding the community. Why do we have to be the ones that suffer in our own homeland, and you guys come in and make it lepo, and it was years ago, but now you have to clean up the mess of your predecessors? And I'm Kalamai, thank you for being here. But if I'm sitting there and my heart is pounding, I can feel my kupuna in my bones. Those that are Kanaka here, they feel it. And it's so long overdue, and I don't mean to say get out, but it's tiring when we have to watch out for our babies and my mo'opuna that will be here. And then we gotta test our clean water because get lepo in it now, and now somebody might be dying 6, 10, 15 years later. You're from Idaho?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you indigenous?
Of course not.
Indigenous have special ways that we care for our aina and our earth. We only have one earth, and the military is the worst pollutant of our earth. But you give your souls to your government, as my kupuna gave their souls to our kingdom. So we can have a respect for each other, although I have none because the trust is broken, and it's been broken for years. But I don't like to bring anger, even though we have lots of anger. There needs to be healing for our people. And what are my brothers and sisters and our babies going to do when you guys can go back to America and you leave your lepo here? And then we clean it up. Just like the water protectors provide water for those that don't even have, because you guys can't do it because of the red tape and it looks guilty and you have all these rules. I get it. You can't break the barrier down to provide water. We all provide water, and we're not the richest people, but we're going to make sure people that need water are going to get it. So perhaps when you take your uniform off, you would like to bring a case from Costco, not as a military person, but just as a human being that care for our babies that have been drinking this water. That's all we're asking. Maybe not for the military to stand up, but as just humans that are living on our aina that you came here, when you take that suit off, you can go to Costco and grab a couple cases, how my family does, how their families do, and not admit any kind of guilt. It's just to kokua and to show that we have compassion. And that's, I don't really have much more to say, but I couldn't just sit there while this Aina is hurting, because eventually we can't be running from Ahupua'a to Ahupua'a to save everything. That's like the divide and conquer that they're doing to our people. But we're going to come and help and do whatever we can and provide whatever water we can provide for those who need it. Because that's what we do. That's what Hawaiians do. And you're here. So just kokua a little, malo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. Yeah, 50 to 60 homes, it's not that much. And if, there's water left over here, I don't know how often you all have meetings where water is provided. Could y'all not come up with a plan as human beings, as my friend here said, to donate water? Is that possible? Yes?
Hold on, ma'am.
Oh.
We're, like I said earlier, we're a community-based organization. And we can ask our soldiers to see if they want to donate. I cannot order them to give it, but I'll ask and see what our soldiers can do.
And how can we, as a community, coordinate with you so that when people, when I go to Costco next, who will be the coordinating person?
I have to figure that out, but we'll work something out.
Okay.
I can get your information after this, and then I can give you my card, and
Okay.
we can figure something out.
Okay, thank you. And then the next thing, how can we get the water tested from 50 or 60 homes, $79 a pop, within 3 weeks you get from Cyclopure, you get an answer, so people will know.
Yeah, I talked with Ernie Lau outside, and he gave me another contractor that we can take a look at, and he was going to get with his staff and see how long that took. So once I get that information from Ernie, and if it's quicker, then we'll see what we can do. I'm not sure if we have a set contract already, but...
Yeah, maybe we need to work around that. I mean, if I can get within 2 weeks, that doesn't make any sense.
Sorry, Susan, I'm going to ask Erwin, my deputy manager, how long it takes for lab rework.
Can you come to the mic, sir?
Okay.
We just want to capture, we're recording this as well, so people who couldn't make it can hear.
You want to use this?
This one, please. Thank you, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Erwin Kawata. I'm Deputy Manager at Board of Water Supply. So we've been doing testing of our wells for PFAS since 2020. The turnaround time for our tests is 21 days. That's normal turnaround time. We asked our laboratory to expedite it, and we try to get them to push it for us within 14 days. We are sending them a lot of samples, so capacity becomes an issue because we're not their only client. Yeah, they're serving other utilities and other customers nationwide. So, but it's something that we've been watching quite closely. So Ernie is, and then as far as the testing.
Yeah, no, thank you. So this is not a Board of Water Supply meeting, this is with the National Guard here, but earlier there was a question about information about investigations at different military sites. So just to let everybody know, and as soon as I get the information, if we're able to get it, on January 10th, I believe, we sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense asking that very question. For all the military installations on Oahu, whether it's active or shut down or closed, We'd like to get all information they have about PFAS, AFFF use on the base, releases, spills, etc. And we want to know if there's any investigations being conducted, the status of the investigations, the results. The idea here is that this PFAS is a growing problem for the whole nation. Hawaii is not immune from it. And the sooner we can understand the scope and magnitude of the problems that we may be facing in the near future, the better. We can actually start to think about planning on how we can address the problems. So these investigations are very important. I do, and I did earlier talk about the issues that when I was first approached, and we only learned about this about a few weeks ago, and thank you, Army National Guard, for reaching out to us. One of the immediate things I saw was the need to, because I know when I grew up in Waipahu and I fished in Pu'uloa as a youngster, that the issue is also not only drinking water wells, or what they call drinking water receptors, but it's also the many farms, the lo'i, the watercress farms, the other thing, the local ia. I didn't know that there are some being restored here, but you know, will this actually end up in the food supply? So I suggested earlier, it sounds like they're kind of constrained by parameters set from the leadership in the Department of Defense, but that's something I'll be pushing for. I don't know if it'll be successful, to ask them to do a more expansive investigation for our community. And definitely, we'll provide the name of the laboratory and the contact information on Monday, and see if they can maybe hopefully reach out and see if they can expedite the test results in a faster turnaround time than 12 to 14 weeks. That's way too long. Thank you.
No, and we'd love to get in contact with you. We'll get in contact with you and see if we can use some of those same labs for sure. You know,
one thing I would request, and I just learned tonight looking at the slides, that you're expecting comments. We just got the draft a few weeks ago, a draft site investigation report. I wasn't aware there's a deadline and that you're soliciting comments from us on that, but we may take a little longer to do the thorough review of that report and provide you formal comments on the report. But I do appreciate them being open and reaching out to us, because prior to this, we knew nothing about the situation here. But we are seeking from the Department of Defense, because there are quite a few sites on Oahu that are military installations that are suspected for PFAS contamination. And I don't know what the status of the investigations are, but I hope they will be transparent and open to providing that information to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lau. Anybody else have any questions for us or comments to make? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to be, the panel will go to their different desks like we did in the open house. If you want to walk up to them and ask them questions, then they'll be here probably for another half hour or so. And you could get them one-on-one. You can ask them more questions. Okay, so they're making this, they might have to use the bathroom, and then they'll be at their desks. But please feel free to come up to the desk and ask them questions. If you want to see the maps that were on the slides, it's more detailed, easier to see. Thank you very much for coming. If you're walking on that side by the coolers, be careful. I saw that it was leaking. Don't slip, please. Thank you very much for coming, and then we'll be around. Mahalo.
Keep flowing on. Not me. You're in the wrong spot.
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and end the video stream now. Thank you.